Hey everybody. Just kind of reflecting on some things. The disagreements that we have. We are all at different layers and different levels. There's layers and levels of things. We're not all going to be in the same place. There's going to be some differences of opinions and viewpoints. Allowing another to have their viewpoint, giving it not having the need to change their viewpoint. You can share yours, but I think we have to be able to get away from the need to change that other's viewpoint. To be able to do it without being argumentative and combative. We can all slip into that. I'm not immune to that. But we have to really think about it. Does it resolve things? We can have conflict without chaos. But anyway, just thinking about it. You see so much of it on social media until you can't help but reflect on it. Like I said, there's levels and layers to things. There are the things you know, the things you don't know, that you don't know, and things you don't know that you ain't even got a clue you don't know. So to be arrogant and assume that we know all, well, it's not going to really serve us. We have to be able and willing to use critical thinking skills. It's not something that's really encouraged in our educational institutions, not as widely as you might like to think. But if you can critically think things through, if you grew up in a home where you weren't allowed to question, where questioning what you were told brought disdain or mocking or shame or punishment, you're going to struggle a little bit as an adult when you have questions. If you grew up and your primary caregivers, the people that you were dependent on as a child, were constantly dishonest with you, around you, you're going to struggle a little bit to have just faith and trust just because someone has a title of authority. You're going to probably struggle with that. Or you might swing to the other end and be very docile and compliant, even in the face of something that clearly doesn't add up. You have to be able to evaluate things for yourself. Sometimes we don't know enough to do that. And we have to defer to those who may know more than we do. It's not always easy if you got trust issues. But like I said, there's layers and levels to things. We have to allow each other the space, recognize that we are not all in the same space. If the authority figures in your life were abusive, it can be confusing when the people that you are dependent on, who are supposed to love and nurture and care for you, don't do that. There could be a confusion, some cognitive dissonance in your thinking, like you're going to have some struggles with that. We take that into adulthood. You see it every day. If we were just to question things, but so often we won't, no matter how often authority figures lie to us, are caught lying to us, sometimes doing far worse than lying to us, and then we're still supposed to believe them. And you can go through ridicule from neighbors, friends, co-workers, siblings. if you were to challenge an authority figure, doesn't matter that they've already lied and abused their power and authority, you're still supposed to be reliant on them. It kind of goes back down to what you see in a child who's been in an abusive home. People are being abused in workplaces, in our health institutions, in our educational institutions, in all manners, our social structures. There's a lot of it that goes around. It's just abuse of power. People that speak up they seem to be troublemakers. Sometimes ostracized as a way of bringing about compliance. Now I understand that there needs to be a certain amount of us being able to work together. But to demonize those that use critical thinking skills or to question things, why is that? The truth can stand up to questioning. If someone speaks the truth and somebody has questions, why would there be a need to be defensive or antagonistic to go on attack? You just answer the questions. The truth can stand up to scrutiny. So if you're asking questions and it can't stand up to scrutiny, one might need to look at that a little deeper. Why is that? I remember growing up, and I grew up in religious institutions and homes that were very stringent in their religious ideologies, quite passionate about it. But you couldn't really question. It didn't go too well. I remember one time asking a question in a Bible study, and the assistant pastor just kind of slamming down his Bible. He was not happy. I was shocked. I was excited to be there and to have the questions that I had, and had a deep desire for true understanding. And that response completely shut me down. It let me know that it wasn't safe to ask questions. But he wasn't comfortable with the level of the questions because he didn't know how to answer it. He didn't know an answer, and he wasn't comfortable not being in a position of authority and just acknowledging that he didn't know. So that didn't go well. But if I question, so often religious people, parents are hold so tight to the leash of their children, don't want them to leave their faith. But if they can't question and explore, how will they ever know for themselves? How will they ever develop a personal relationship? How will they ever know? And that doesn't mean you'll know everything. Yes, there's faith. But how do you build faith? So often we're not asking them to build faith in a higher power. We're asking them to build faith in our truths. And there's a difference. But anyway, those are just examples. But I remember when I was younger, I've always had problems with my body absorbing vitamin D. So my vitamin D levels were very low. They gave me a high dose of vitamin D. I did that and really didn't think too much of it. As I've gotten older, I've learned the importance of vitamin D, the vital role that it plays in our immunity, in our health, in our moods, in our bone health. And so I've gotten to know more about that. So they tested my vitamin D levels and found I had almost none in my body. So they put me on a high dose of vitamin D. I didn't think anything of it. I know I need it. But months went by and the levels weren't really rising. And so she wanted to increase my dose. I was already on a high dose of vitamin D. And I said no. And she kind of looked shocked. I said, no, sorry, I'm not doing that. I don't understand why I should take more vitamin D instead of us looking at why my body isn't absorbing the high levels you were already giving me. And she just kind of gave me a blank look. But I went home and did my own research. The body needs magnesium for it to properly absorb and store vitamin D in the body. If you take high levels of vitamin D without taking magnesium, you're going to find yourself magnesium deficient and may have some of the very symptoms that a vitamin D deficiency might look like. We need an assortment of vitamins and minerals. They're often dependent on one another to absorb. So anyway, I started taking some magnesium. My vitamin D levels climbed to normal. But had I relied on my doctor, don't get me wrong, I love my doctor. I love this doctor. She was very open-minded and was generally open into my questioning and exploring, and me being very firm on the fact that this is my body. You are not the expert on my body. I will use your expertise and knowledge to help me make best decisions for myself, but I'm not going to rely on you to make those decisions for me as if I have no knowledge of my own self. Now, like I said, there was a time I didn't. I ain't had no choice but to rely on other people. I didn't know enough. I didn't think to be tapped in. I wasn't attuned to my own body to even know what was going on in it. But as I've gotten older and done healing work and gotten more connected to my own self, I've been able to do that. And so I'm not too tolerant of doctors who aren't open to that discussion. This is my body. But like I said, what if I had just still relied on them? They're not perfect. They're human. Their educational system is all about pharmacology. It's not too often focused on the body's natural ability to heal and what that looks like. It's not really the focus for Western medicine. So if I had just relied on that, I might still be struggling with vitamin D and having symptoms of magnesium deficiency. We have to be willing and able to critically think, and then and know what we don't know. And sometimes like I said, you may not know you don't know. In which case you have to be open to other people, because you have to recognize that you don't know everything. And just because you're open to the ideas of another don't mean you take it on. It doesn't mean you own them. It means you're open because you know you don't know everything. We have to be willing and able and recognize the limitations that each of us may individually have. We're at different places. If someone is struggling with cognitive dissonance and they don't know how to look at and acknowledge that someone in a position of authority is abusing that authority can be a very hard thing to look at. That can send someone into crisis. Not everybody is at the space where they can do that just yet. And to demonize them, mock them, criticize them because they are not, is not going to help them. I've had resistance to things I'm just learning. And then I'll realize it wasn't the first time I heard it, but now there's a resistance to it. I hear it and now there's a resistance. I now have grown enough to recognize that resistance has a gift to offer me. I have to look at the things I'm in resistance to. It has something to tell me. I began to ask myself why that might be. I wasn't always in a place where I knew to do that, had the awareness to do that. It didn't mean that there was a problem with where I was. That was a different layer, a different level. We're all at different layers and different levels, and we have to make those accommodations for other people, educate and share along the way, but we can't force someone to share our journey. We can't force a person to be where we are. And mocking and shaming and demonizing one another when we're not shuts down communication. It doesn't allow for the flow of information and dialogue. It doesn't help us get to a resolution. And we have to look at that. There's reasons why there's denial when it comes to systemic abuse. There's a reason that people deny it. To be able to look at it, it can be overwhelming and can send you into a very strong downward spiral if you're not ready to handle that. We have to make room and space for each of us to grow and evolve. Share along the way. Yes, fight for the things that you're passionate about. Some things are worth fighting for. But fighting to make someone believe what you believe might not be one of them. It's just a suggestion, a thought. We need to be able to critically think things through for ourselves so that we're not subject to outside people to tell us things. And if you are, there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to get to the point where you're willing to question and look at things on their own merit and using your own intelligence. But it's my random reflections for the day. Sorry, I did ramble on a bit longer than I meant to. But I love you guys. I hope you're having a good week.